Welcome to the Life in Flow podcast.
The three of us, Yulia, Polina, and Irina, are exploring what life in flow and flow in life is.
Join us as we experiment, test our diverse hypotheses, and have fun in the process.
Will we find an answer?
This isn't just an intellectual discussion. We're co-creating a shared field beyond words. We're attuning to what emerges moment by moment so that the conversation itself becomes a group flow experience.
And we invite you to become an active participant in this experiment. There will be pauses and moments of silence. We leave them on purpose because this is where magic happens.
Go beyond the intellectual information. Listen with your whole body and notice how your somatic experience shifts in the process. Share with us what reveals itself in the space where mind, body, and energy flow together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Life in Flow podcast. This is me, Yulia, and with me today and in future episodes are
Polina
and Irina. Yes, and we will introduce ourselves in a little bit more detail later, but just to give you an idea of what will be happening today, we just wanted to share with you who we are and what is it flow that we're so passionate about, and about the history and the future of Life and Flow podcast as we imagine it now. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of the backstory, a tiny bit, that this is our second take, of recording the first episode. And the first time, what we did, we talked a lot, and we didn't really like the sense of flow, or the sense of flow. Sometimes it was there and sometimes it wasn't. This is our experiment. We're going to do it the second time and a little bit differently. So to try and create and preserve more flow, a lot of this will be improvised. So there wasn't much prepping. The only one who knows the questions that are going to be asked today is me. I'm going to be facilitating this episode. And I want you to keep this in mind as you listen to the episode. Also, we invite you to, as we maybe go into an exercise, as we share, first, kind of like see if you can be aware of what's happening, not only at the intellectual level, but at the level of what you're feeling, what your sensing. And also there will be an exercise where we'll invite you to join in as well. Okay, with that short introduction, I'm going to start with a small exercise we're going to do at the beginning. And the exercise is about coming up with a couple of stories in response to a word that I have come up with. That, again, the girls don't know the word. And that word is improvising. I feel this is a big part of flow, well, an important part of flow anyway. This is what we're doing a lot of today. So I'm inviting you to see what comes up as you hear the word improvising, maybe a story, an experience, and share with us.
Do we have an order or we go as it flows?
I invite you to go as it flows. So if you have an idea already, please.
Yeah. What came to my mind immediately actually is a story that I have just shared with Polina just before we started the recording our episode. And it is one of the situations that in my memory is recorded as one of the brightest experiences of flow I had. And it was an experience of cooking. I just came from a concert. I felt very inspired by the music, and I was in a group of friends. So I volunteered to cook a dinner. And all I remember is the sensation that I was just dancing with the process, with all the ingredients. And then we were at the table and everyone was saying like, wow, it's so delicious. What is the recipe that you used? And I was like, recipe? I didn't have any recipe. I actually don't know what I did. I was just in the moment and it was coming up all like it was just emerging. I have no idea what I did. And it was, total improvisation, but everyone liked it.
And improvisation that ended up in the way that people liked it probably could have been otherwise also.
Yes.
Because who knows what's around you?
I usually tend to improvise during cooking, and sometimes it doesn't go well. But that experience, when just you feel like what should go into where at each moment, and the most clear sensation really is just it was a dance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a beautiful and tasty outcome of an improvisation.
Based on what you just shared, it triggered in me like a whole flow sequence of what at first the word improvisation literally made my body go like this. I don't know if you noticed. I was like, oh, improvisation is this thing. It's this like sway with yourself, with the field. And actually, it's so true that improvisation and cooking for me is also a strong connection. I almost never follow a recipe. Even if I read a recipe, I still then put it aside, and then I kind of get into this flow state where I'm sort of tasting stuff without physically actually putting into my mouth. I'm like kind of using my imagination to be like, oh yeah, this would taste together based on, I guess, what my memory, contains in terms of data about the ingredients. And also for me, what came up was improvisation has to do like a direct connection to trust, like self-trust. So the more self-trust I have, the more improvisation becomes actually like a flow of life for me. Because really, if you break it down, like as I was breaking it down as you were talking, I was like, wait, there's improvisation in like every aspect of life, really, unless you're like specifically preparing for an exam, right? And there's a very concrete thing you're doing, but like in general, life is one big improvisation, and every time you show up, it is another improvisation. I think I used to have a bit of a negative connotation with that word. I don't know why, but that came up for me, like as if it's not an improvisation is not being real. But now it's really transformed to no, that like improv is almost the most real, in the moment, what's the word, in the moment exploration of yourself and whatever elements you're coming into contact with.
Yeah, like the salt and pepper and sugar.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So both of you somehow had some experience related to cooking in response to improvisation. I also always improvise, never follow a single recipe exactly. But actually something else came to mind. I also wasn't really preparing anything, trusting that I would just come up with something. I last week I went to a jazz concert at a school, and it was the German army, actually the orchestra of the German army performing. Well, they had some kind of a workshop that they did at the school where a child of our friends goes. But anyway, so they were really professional players. Basically, those are musicians that they are the army, but their work is just to play an orchestra. And they were doing really well, but it was good quality. And I was, okay, yes, good. You can see that they have been practicing a lot, maybe many years. And then at some point, I think it was a piece where I don't know if they decided to improvise or it was planned. A few of them, I think 5 of them, stood up in a group, and then they started doing these things where it's like moving with their bodies, and like I got goosebumps. It was the change in energy, the change in music, the change in my perception. It was so strong. And all they did, they kind of, I guess, I don't know like what was happening. I guess they got the autonomy, creativity back, and of course, trust in themselves. So they created group flow, as we would say, right? That like feels you're all on the same wavelength. Anyway, that was really cool. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, that's my story. Okay, so anything else comes to mind before we move to the questions? I've got, let's say, 5 to 7 questions, depending on how it goes. So they won't be kind of long type discussion questions. But for now, anything else? Any stories? Anything that you want to share?
I just want to share my experience of what I was feeling while I was listening to your stories. Because when Polina started talking about the dancing and I really felt like these movements, and actually I remembered that dancing is also for me one of the great areas where I always improvise. And then talking about the shift in the state, when you started talking about the trust in yourself. So the word trust really provoked this shift in the state for me. And I just felt that more centered, more present, allowing myself just to be. And then when Yulia started talking about the jazz and the music, I felt again this sort of the flowy movements in the body. It was very curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also experiencing it with my body, my whole body.
And I experienced it in my body as soon as you mentioned improvisation. That was my first response. And then my brain was like, Polina, you're really going to move your body now? And then some other aspect of Polina was like, yeah, I'm going to really move my body now.
That's why it's called trust, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I am going to move my body.
Yeah. And I guess that resonated in the field with Ira. That was cool. Wait, can I ask you a question? Is trust actually also part of your example with the band?
Totally. I think if they didn't trust themselves, they probably wouldn't have generated this group flow. I mean, it was like an energetic field that they were holding, let's say, and they were radiating that into this huge hall where, I don't know, 200-300 people were there.
Yeah. And trust also of one another then, right? I'm kind of, right?
Yeah, I think so.
create something like that together, which I think actually is an element that's in the field between the three of us. It's not just like the topic matter and the exploration of flow and all that cool stuff, but actually there is, I mean, I feel an inherent trust with the two of you, which allows me to explore things to a greater extent. So I just wanted to bring that in because that was up for me at the moment.
Yeah. An important trigger of group flow.
Trust?
Yeah.
True.
Okay, so we're going to move to questions now. And probably if you are listening this, you have noticed, and maybe you were wondering, what kind of accent is this that I have and that Ira has, not so much Polina. And I'll let you on a secret. We actually have come together. Also, maybe it's a part of it that we're of the same heritage. We come originally from Russia, where we were born. So this is where my next question goes, a little bit just to explore and to give you an idea about a short bio, like where you are in the world and how you got there. Just a brief story.
Like a personal story?
Yes, a just personal story.
Like not anything too deep, just like the logistics of it all.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. So I am currently living in San Diego in the US. I came here via New York. And before New York, it was Russia. And so my family immigrated when I was 10. And then I spent the next many years in New York. And then about 8 years ago, I moved here. And during this time, I ended up being in the Netherlands for over a year. And that's when I was introduced to this cool networking group of women. And that's where I met Yulia. And part of us meeting was the heritage element, which I was in the process of experimenting with, playing with, maybe what's the word?
Researching?
Not researching, like, oh my gosh, I'm like losing
reintegrating?
Reintegrating, that's a good word. Yes, reintegrating around, figuring out what does it mean that this is my heritage. And so I was, I was in this group, and then I saw Yulia, and there was like this immediate, oh, you got to reach out to her. Is she Russian? And then, one part of my brain was like, Polina, don't reach out to Russian. She's Russian. Like, you're not going to be able to connect because in my experience in the past, I haven't been able to connect to really legit Russian people from that have spent more time in Russia. But energetically in the field, it was like, no, Polina, you got to reach out to her. So I followed that thread, that pull, and it was one of the coolest things ever. And then Yulia was gracious enough to invite Ira and me into a group together. And then I was like, oh my God, this is so cool, because I'm literally going through this whole process of reintegrating what does it mean to be Russian. And now I am in front of these two women that are very different in terms of my experience in the past. They're open. They're doing all these cool things. And so it was, I don't know, it was just all lighting up. It was definitely an experience of flow. So does that cover your question?
Yes. I mean, it's your story, so it covers my question. It's you were born in St. Petersburg, and at what age did you move to the States?
St. Petersburg, and I moved when I was 10. Yeah.
Okay.
New York. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Where are you right
now?
My
story is that I was born and grew up in a secret town that was not on the maps of Soviet Union, because it was an academic town that held like about more than 20 research centers in all kind of sciences. And my Spanish friends tend to joke that I'm a result of the scientific experiment, which is sort of true, partly, because I studied in an experimental school, and the Ministry of Education tested on us all different kind of innovations they wanted to introduce into the education system, so that they tested it on us. And my whole life was always revolved around all kind of different creative activities. But at a certain point, I had a hiccup, and I ended up in a corporate world and working for an American multinational corporation, which brought me from Moscow to Barcelona, where I live now. And after they brought me here, I realized that the corporate finances is not the thing I wanted to do in my life. That I wanted to do something creative. So I said them bye-bye. And since then, I'm just exploring all kind of creative endeavors here on the creative streets of Barcelona.
So you were in finance.
Wait, I didn't know this, because you and I have a similar background then, because I also had a hiccup in the finance world.
But makes three of us.
What?
I didn't call it a hiccup, but I was also in finance.
I would definitely call it a hiccup. I mean, I was just observing something I wasn't made for. I didn't belong, but but it was an interesting experiment.
It was definitely an interesting experience, but I have to admit, the 4 years I spent at the economics department of Moscow State University, I was like, what am I doing here? But still, after that, I went to business school to do an MBA.
Mm-hmm. That part of your biography you never shared before.
You never shared that. I love that we're constantly learning new things as we're progressing in this project.
Well, that's quite a long hiccup, it sounds like. 4 years at school, then 2 years as an MBA, then the finance. Yeah.
Mine was also around that same time, about over 6 years in finance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Yulia, what's your story?
So I was born in Russia, as I said, in a city called Rizai. It's about 300 kilometers from Moscow, but actually not even in the city or in a town, but in a village. And I dreamt for a long time that I would leave that village forever. I would just not be back. And now I'm so longing to be back. I miss it so much. I've been home for 3 years. So I was actually at a pedagogics university where I was studying English and German as a teacher. And then at the end of it, so happened that I moved to California with 3 friends of mine, and also to do an MBA, which was the story, because all of us, we had almost no money, what we're going to do and how we're going to pay for the MBA. Part of it was finance, but only the first semester. Where we were going to live, that was all big question. Anyway, we made it. And for 7 years, I lived in California doing different things. One of them was corporate finance after the MBA. So look at us, huh? Hiccups, financial hiccups. Then I got back to Moscow. Before that, we stopped with my family in France for a year. And then back to Moscow. And then now I'm in Berlin. Been in Berlin for 7 years. So yeah, it's kind of geographically, that's the story. I've been doing a lot of different things, from corporate finance to Greenpeace to freelancing, nutrition, breathing, herbs, coaching, lots of different stuff. But we'll probably get into some of the things that we do later on, because that's actually what my next question is going to be. So it's, what is that brought you into the topic of flow?
You?
Also, actually, before that, maybe just a couple of words about what flow is.
Well, again, a note for our listeners is, we said that this is the first episode, but this is not the first time we're recording the episode. So we have had some conversations before this one. And so we had some opportunities to discuss what the flow is. And I really liked the definition that came to me in these discussions that I'm settling with for now, as being one with the experience.
Okay, so it means that now you're flowing if you are one with this experience. And how does it feel if you are one with this experience? Any markers?
Well, it depends on the experience, I guess.
Like this experience, for example.
Well, that right now, this flow feels flowy, expansive, trancey. I don't know. I think these are the adjectives that I would use.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what brought you into this?
Well, as I
flow?
already mentioned, that my whole life has always revolved around creativity. So first, it was about looking for the experience of flow in my creative process, although I didn't know the word flow and didn't know anything about the concepts or the concepts of the flow state. Then at a certain point, my creative endeavors led me to become a creativity facilitator. And so my research for the creative flow turned into the exploration of how to facilitate it for others. And actually, there is also another, I don't like the word topic, like another theme that my life revolves around, about creativity and consciousness. I said, although it's like, what? So like the other part of my explorations have been all kind of things consciousness related. And it led me to the work with trance states, which actually brought together all my previous explorations in my personal creative process and in how to facilitate it in others, like of how to facilitate this flow state in the creative process. It was all united by my work with the trance states. It's still like one of the central themes of my life.
Mm-hmm. And let's say trance state and flow states, how are they related?
I would say that flow state for me is a type of a trance state. Not the other way around. Not all trance state would be flow state, although maybe this is something to think about. But flow state for me is definitely the trance state.
Yeah. Okay. It's like trance state. Some people somehow, I have experience with some people who are a little bit scared of the word trance state. What we're referring to is just an altered state of consciousness, not your usual state, waking state. Where
But here we also need to specify, because the people also tend to associate the altered state of consciousness with being under the influence of something, and it's not necessarily the case. Actually, we experience the trance state very often in ordinary life, like when you're reading a book, we're all very often in a trance state.
So your definition of trance would be this trance state, because I also don't always resonate with that word. So, but I know what you mean, because we've been in this container together enough. So I've been getting more comfortable with that word. But how would you describe it in terms of definition?
If we need to not to define, but maybe to specify the altered state of consciousness, it's the state of consciousness different from our or normal, the executive mode when we are solving problems.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, I like that.
And it's normally just somewhat more open with that. It globes in my experience, translate normally helps to hold in the same space different experiences, or different elements of the experience together.
Which is a big part of creativity, right? Creative.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Polina?
So it's funny, whenever Ida goes first and I go second, I get to tune into what she's sharing, and then it reminds me of elements from my own origins that I don't maybe think about or even remember on the daily. So creativity was also a big part of my original exploration with how the world moves and how I move within it. I used to write poetry, and I used to paint and draw and do all kinds of really things like that. And that was actually my first medium for practicing being in that altered state where you are using your mental faculties in terms of language, right? And the words and rhyming for poetry, for example. But you're also accessing, I guess, what I now understand, now that we're looking back at it from the perspective of flow, I now understand is flow, right? Maybe back then I used to think I'm connecting to an altered or another version of me that was also there in some way, maybe a deeper, but now again, it's just now I can't unsee it. It was a flow of being with yourself in another capacity or way. And then the human psychology was also something that was always fascinating. I mean, so much so that, I got an undergrad in psychology and then a grad degree in industrial organizational psychology. And then the experience of flow was not there for me for many, many years. I would say an entire chunk of life until the last few years was more mental grind, control, figure it out, money, status, whatever, all that stuff. And now I'm looking back from who I am today and what we've been playing with in our field. It's oh my God, I don't think I know I of course would have had to have some moments of flow during that time frame, but honestly, no, it was a push and a grind and a survival. Even in times of feast, I was still surviving in some ways. So that state does not really coincide with a state of flow, because flow requires you, from how I see it now, this sense of trust in yourself, trust in
energies, trust in flow of life, trust that things, are flowing in a different kind of way, right? And being able to hold a different perspective around it. So that is actually my definition of flow at the moment. It is, how do I occupy myself in terms of not just like physically in terms of self-regulation, but self-regulation is part of it, right? But am I like in my head, or am I in my whole mind, right? As Dan Siegel explains to us, right? Like, I really love his perspective on all of this, that the mind is actually not just in your brain. So when I'm able to embody myself in that way, with that sense of trust, then I'm able to interact with the energies within and without in a way that is like that experience of flow, and also with other people that come in and out, or situations or circumstances. And then also the less judge that's driving me, the judge self, and the more like I'm looking for opportunities, or like, how is this, happening for me, not to me or against me, right? Then that facilitates even more flow. So, and of course, if I'm not rested enough or I'm not fed enough, that also interferes with that sense of flow. So this is all the elements, basically, as I see it now, are part of that, the experience of flow.
Interestingly, the trust that emerged at the beginning is still here as a central piece.
Yeah, I know. Super cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I was thinking as I was listening to Yulia and Polina, what is my definition of flow? I think my subjective definition of flow at the moment, actually, it's defined by one marker. If it's there, I know I'm in flow. If it's not, I know I'm not. And that is feeling of gratitude. And feeling of gratitude when it's there, even when I need to do something challenging. Feeling of gratitude when I wake up in the morning and maybe the weather is not great, but still I do have this feeling of gratitude for something, for life, for water, even for water. Yeah, I think that's it. And I guess how its flow is orchestrated by being aware and in tune with many connections, kind of like navigating the interconnectedness, navigating somehow that it's aligned and it results in a sense of gratitude. That's my definition. And I got very interested in the concept of flow and group flow because I was lacking flow for a very long time. And I was doing things, going for that breathwork education or going for nutrition consultant education, definitely looking for something, but not actually even realizing, I think, that I was lacking flow. I was kind of like in the darkness. Okay, I guess like I'm alive and some days are fun. And it's when some really painful moments hit that I became aware that, whatever I had been doing did not work, even though it was like a hamster in the wheel doing different types of self-development. And then I started researching flow and that alignment piece. And yeah, and then at one point, I think it was a year and a half ago, so I joined an improv comedy course here in Berlin. I have no clue even how I got there, but it was a big challenge. Sometimes I would just hate it and not be in flow at all when I would come to a class. And then suddenly those moments of group flow, when they started to happen, oh my God, can I have more of that? And so different things happened, I guess, and where it's like, okay, how can I create more flow in my life? Who can help me? And here we are, guess, helping each other to create more flow.
Exactly. I just want to add that, like, the concrete search or even exploration of flow was thanks to you, because even though I love the way you described it, you were like searching for flow in the darkness for all those years. That was my experience too. I just used different words for it, but I didn't even know that that's what I was looking for. And then when you started to talk about it more and talk more about your improv classes, and then I had a bit of an experience with an improv aspect in some of the things that I was doing, I was like, wait, hold on. This is like an unlocking of like this persona, and just allowing yourself to be like whatever you are without judgment, and like it's literally this physical sense movement. This is what I now understand we were like slowly doing, and building and building and building, and it is the allowing to like show up and just be something I desperately needed, but I didn't even know how to get there, or like what's the thing that gets you there. So I'm so glad that you brought it up as a concrete topic, and then I started reading the books about it and be like, oh, this is the thing. And through our experimentation, it was literally like step by step on unlocking into flow, is how I would phrase it.
Basically, we just love to have more trance state in our lives.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Yeah. I also have to add something, because I loved how Polina started to be like doing this dancing movement, saying like, yeah, this is this feeling that we're looking for. Because while I was listening to Yulia's story, I even noted down the navigating interconnectedness. I love this phrase. And so it made me thinking that definition that I gave as being one with the experience, and you asked me, how does it feel? So it came to my mind that exactly it feels as I described when I was talking about my experience of cooking. Like it's dancing with the experience. So this is what came to me while I was like listening to you.
And I used to actually be a dancer. I used to do so much dance when I was younger, like ballet and Russian folk dancing, by the way. Even in America, I was part of like this local dance school where it was actually Russian speaking. It was owned by a Russian woman, who was like this, I guess, Russian leader in the dance space in Brooklyn back then. And, we would do ballet, and we would do Russian folk and Ukrainian and Belarus, like all of the different, because they all have different outfits and stuff. But it's funny because back then I remember that sensation of the shift when I was on stage, and then you're just like in the expression of it. And it's like a totally altered state. Not only are you embodying yourself in an alternate way, you're also playing a character. And it's like, you're really playing this character, and you're using your butt, but it is really this motion, this movement. It's like such an expression. And then right after the performance would be done, I would go back to my box, my shell, until the next opportunity to express in a different way and go beyond like these boxy chainy things, right? For lots of reasons, but But I didn't allow myself to like occupy this physical movement and dance until very recently. So it's so cool to have this like come around moment. Yeah.
See, dancing is back, huh?
Yeah. Dancing is back. And it's going to be better than ever. I'm going to show you my robot.
Well, we're gonna, take your word, okay?
We'll have a jam session. I'll show you my robot. You show me yours.
I can totally relate to what Polina describes. I also feel like one of my main, like the brightest or deepest, I even don't know how to characterize it. Like, but one of the like the main kinds of the flow experiences that I had in my life were on stage too. I loved dancing when I was a child, but I also have done a lot of theater, and like these really just like this is the first part of my exploration of my search for the flow, even when I didn't know what the flow state was for this experience of being a channel while you're creating.
Yeah, that literally gives me a physical, energetic sensation in my body.
Yeah.
A channel for the expression and the altered states of it all, and what does it all mean? Because if this altered state exists, then what is me? Like in the mix of all that. Yeah, it's really cool.
And when I know that I can be in that state, why would I be in a misery, huh?
Exactly.
Well, it's life.
Life and flow in life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this topic
and out of flow. Life out of flow, right?
We will leave for later because there will be an episode of whether flow is always positive or not. Maybe for now we'll just start concluding. And first, I wanted to ask you, there's two small questions. What do you expect this project, how do you expect this project to evolve? Just talk to me about what this podcast is and what it could be. I know we don't really have a definite idea at this point. But
I actually have two aspects of my answer. So, like, one is not that like what I expect from the project per se, but what I would like. I don't like the word to achieve, but like the sense I see in our exploration. Because I strongly believe that we need to find different ways of operating in the world, like different from what we're used to in our civilization. And these different ways, I believe, are consistent exactly in flowing with life and learning how to be attuned to what is emerging at every moment inside of us and outside of us, and how it's all connected. Like, how can we navigate our interconnectedness with everything? So, and this is the sense of what we're doing for me. Like exploring these ways, these new ways of being in the world and operating in the world with us and with each other and with our listeners. But also there is this aspect of like expectations of how I would like us to evolve. And again, for our listeners, I will just be transparent that this is something that we had been discussing before the backstage between three of us. But I really would like us at a certain point to arrive at this level of our awareness, acute awareness and alignment with what is emerging, and the awareness of our interconnectedness. So it would help to induce this state of flow, this trance state of flow, to those who would listen to us. So that this state would transpire through the recordings.
So you would like to see more people in trance states.
Yeah,
Tune
of course.
in for some trance state.
Of course. I strongly believe that we are changing the world with the shifts of our energy states. With the shift of the states of our energy. That would be more correct.
Okay. Yeah. So whoever is listening, stay tuned. Polina?
I mean, I definitely resonate with everything that Ida just mentioned. For me also, the motivation is I just want to build on what we're doing. And also in a way where not only are we testing, experimenting, stretching our kind of containers in terms of energy and flow and how we hold space, but also be really cool if the audience would, kind of be on this journey with us and, even report back to what is their experience of flow as we are, keep going on this project. And maybe co-create flow, not just between the three of us, but also with the, whoever wants to be, participating in the container as a listener. And another thing, actually, because we already recorded this episode, although this is a very different episode too, the first one, to me, it's a little bit of proof of concept. It's okay to rehearse or study or learn so that some of those neural pathways are already, like they've made the connections. And then you show up like we do today, and it's so much easier, so much more flow, so much freer. So in the rehearsing, that's also part of the co-creating flow and creating it in yourself, creating it, with each other and hopefully in the larger sphere. So I actually love that that's also kind of a part of the experiment that we're doing, And one of the other cool things, and it speaks to the stories that we shared today, is we are coming a lot from a very specific culture, right? That operate in a very specific way. And we even, worked in finance and corporate. That's a very, very structured, rigid type of way of being. And now we're experimenting with this project. And not only are we doing it from the perspective of flow, but even the way we're approaching it is almost forcing us to do it from the perspective of flow. You can't really prep for these episodes. I texted you guys this morning, I think. I was like, there's no way to prepare for this, that one of those faces. And then I was like, there's no way to prepare for this. Yes. Yes. That is what we're trying to do. Not trying, but this is what we're doing. Like, how do we embody ourselves, not just with our experiment with flow energetically in between us, the interconnectedness, but even with this project. I feel like that's what we're doing as well. And if that could be an example to our younger versions, I guess, not older, younger versions, but also maybe to whoever's listening, and we can light a spark for this movement and transformation, that would be freaking awesome and amazing. No.
Yeah. What do I want to say? I guess one of the things is I have fun with it. That is a really big motivator for me. So I think that life actually is supposed to include those really bright moments, like flow and altered states. I think humans historically would have those altered states with flow, dancing by the fire, or drumming together on a regular basis. And the even more important, maybe not more important, because I'm sure they were, as probably they considered them to be very important. But they have to be there for us to, as you said, to navigate this. Now that our environment and our lives are so weird from what it used to be and from our bodies and nervous system are familiar with. So that is, I guess, a long way of saying that this is, well, being in flow together or having more group flow with other people has been very transformative for me. Also here with you. And somehow keeping that for me, but also sharing it with others, that would be really cool. Yeah. That's I guess my thing.
And fun. That's a big one, because you're right. It is fun. This is fun. I think this was like the first time I legitimately started having fun with this whole thing is when we started intentionally doing all these experiments. And I was like, what is the sensation? Oh, wait. Oh my God, is that fun? I forgot what it was.
Yeah, we're not going to be prepping and no one is going to give us a poor grade.
We're just going to show up and be and trust and flow? What? That's a project? What? We could live this way, not just for fun, but also for, like in other containers and projects? What? Or you can say it.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Polina, and this is not to say that we're not doing anything or we don't have discipline. Maybe sometimes too much. And some of us are very much on the perfectionist side, right? Yeah,
Which
this is also a therapeutic project for ourselves. Yes, that I was also referencing myself.
I know, no, of course, in moderating anything, there is an element of prep. I'm saying if you're not moderating that week, it's like, how do you prep? You don't know, right? But for sure, and also there's always prep. Just like I said, there's always prep in whatever it is that you do. It's just the amount of letting go actually sometimes correlates to how much you've prepped. Like if you really know what you're talking about, or you really have experience, then you can let go of having to control it with your mind and just show up in the conversation, and whatever needs to have itself heard will, right? So that's when kind of prep meets flow, right? Or how else would you phrase it?
No, totally. I mean, like you cannot really flow if you haven't practiced before or you haven't been prepping before, like on stage, for example. Improv comedy, it simply does not work if you haven't been practicing for a long time.
Yeah. If they say like the best improvisation is the prepared one. And if we want to talk about the triggers of the science of flow, like you need to know, you need to have enough knowledge of what you're doing. So it would be challenging enough to make it interesting, but so like you would feel free in this improvisation and playing around and into interpreting the results, the feedback that you are getting from the environment and from the process, like to feel whether you are moving in the right direction. So, of course, the preparedness is an important factor.
Yeah. So we've been moving today, but like in this container. maybe not in this, maybe in this.
I
don't know. I was feeling
expansiveness today. What do you mean?
Okay, in some kind of container.
Wait, can we? So, Ida and I have seemed to have more of an expansive experience today. Did you have less of an expansive experience because of the moderation piece?
No, I was just being ironic. No, I was just trying to find this contrast between flow and structure and prepping and practicing.
Yeah.
But we did have a structure for this episode, at least in the Yulia's mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our common mind, we also have agreed on a certain structure of how we record each episode. So there is a structure here. It's just we're not rigid about it, and that's the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah. So just to finish off, maybe there is something that you want to say at the end. Maybe it's something from today, a surprise or something you're taking with you.
I want to
whatever it comes to mind.
Yeah. So this is actually something the three of us have spoken about, and I want to share it with whoever might be listening. That the experiment that we are here to do together is not necessarily about, again, the brain, right? Like the words, the concepts about flow, the this, the that, right? We're actually trying to also capture the sense of the container we're creating, and we're very curious about the sensory experience that maybe the listeners have by listening in or even participating in whatever exercises we might do. That's a prompt to us to, when we re-listen to our episodes, as we experiment with format and all that. One of the prompts is, don't just listen with your brain and judge and analyze. Actually listen with your body sensory experience. Like, what does this feel like to be part of this group or to have that experience, right? So I just wanted to throw that out. Does anyone have something to add to that?
No, to that, no. But I think you've done a great job of voicing it out.
Ira, anything on your?
I just want to say that I have been in trance. and it has been nice trancing with you.
That's true. I also have really had trans moments throughout now that I'm getting more comfortable using that word, but I've definitely had altered states throughout what we've done together. As we were sharing the stories, that would also create different altered states, and then, zooming into my experience, zooming into your experience, all of it. It's like a flow of altered states. It's been fun.
Yeah, it was fun for me as well. I actually learned new things about both of you today. That is cool. I also didn't really know. I was quite honest. I didn't really know what I was going to talk about in response to my own questions. So whatever came out. And I enjoyed it. So thanks a lot. And to whoever might be listening, we appreciate you and your time. And if there is any feedback or anything you have to share, anything at all, please do reach out, and we'll be back with more episodes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. How was it for you? We believe that the more people experience group flow together, the better off we all are. More connected, more creative, more alive. So let's expand the field.
If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word. Share it with a friend, leave a comment, or give us a rating. We love you.
Do subscribe so you'll know when the next experiment comes out. You can also connect with us on our Life and Flow group Substack. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep flowing together.